We picture the Oregon Trail as a line of wagons against a golden sunset, a romantic image etched in our minds. Families gathered by a fire, hope in their eyes, sharing stories and dreams under a canopy of stars. The crackling flames offer warmth and a sense of community in the vast wilderness, a fiddle playing softly. Its melodies carry on the wind, a fragile comfort against the backdrop of the unknown. This image of American grit and manifest destiny is powerful, but incomplete. It glosses over the harsh realities and the immense human cost. The real journey was a grueling 6-month ordeal, a test of endurance that pushed people to their absolute limits, across 2,000 miles of harsh, empty land. A landscape that offered little respite and demanded everything. Most pioneers weren't adventurers. They weren't driven by a thirst for exploration or glory. They were ordinary families, risking everything, their homes, their security, their very lives, for a dream they barely understood, a dream of a better future, a chance at prosperity, a hope for their children. The myth forgets the relentless hardship, the constant struggle against the elements, the wear and tear on body and soul, dust in every breath, coating everything, a constant reminder of the unforgiving environment. Endless walking, day after day, mile after mile, the body aching, the spirit weary, and the constant anxiety of the unknown. What dangers lay ahead? Would they make it? The trail was less a grand adventure, a heroic quest, and more a desperate crawl toward an uncertain future. A future that might not even exist. The true dangers weren't shootouts or buffalo hunts, the dramatic events that capture our imagination, but sickness, the silent killer that could sweep through a wagon train, leaving devastation in its wake. Starvation, the gnawing hunger that weakened bodies and spirits, making every step a monumental effort. Exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness that never lifted, a constant companion on the long journey. And despair, the crushing weight of hopelessness that threatened to extinguish the last embers of hope. These quiet, insidious threats, often unseen and unacknowledged, could turn a hopeful community into desperate individuals, each fighting for their own survival. The Oregon Trail is a story of endurance, of the human spirit's capacity to withstand unimaginable hardship, but also of profound suffering, a reminder of the sacrifices made and the lives lost in the pursuit of a dream. The most difficult pages of this story are the ones we rarely see, the untold tales of struggle and loss. The journey west was a test of body, pushing physical limits to the breaking point. Mind, challenging mental fortitude and resilience in the face of constant adversity. And spirit, a spiritual reckoning that forced individuals to confront their deepest fears and beliefs. It stripped away illusions, revealing the true nature of both the land and themselves. Revealing the raw reality beneath the myth, the stark truth of survival in a harsh and unforgiving world. The real story is far more human, filled with flaws, vulnerabilities, and moments of both great courage and profound weakness. And far more complicated than the legend. A tapestry woven with threads of hope, despair, love, loss, and the enduring will to survive. The unseen road was as much within as it was ahead, a journey into the depths of the human heart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the wagons would be drawn into a circle, a nightly ritual. This formation was more than just a practical measure. It was a symbol of unity, of shared purpose, and above all, of safety in a vast and unforgiving land. The crackling campfire cast dancing shadows, pushing back the darkness and offering a sense of comfort. But the real threats weren't lurking outside in the inky blackness beyond the firelight. They were simmering inside the circle, nestled among the weary travelers themselves. The journey tested the limits of human endurance, and sometimes the greatest dangers came not from the external world, but from within. The relentless journey's stress, the constant uncertainty, and the sheer exhaustion turned small disagreements into bitter feuds that threatened to tear the community apart. What started as minor irritations could quickly escalate into deep-seated resentments. With no formal law enforcement, no established courts, only the collective judgment of fellow pioneers to rely on, trust became a fragile commodity that could quickly erode, leaving individuals vulnerable and isolated. Disputes needed to be resolved quickly but fairly, a borrowed tool that wasn't returned, a missing sack of flour suspected of being stolen, or a heated dispute over precious grazing land for livestock could fracture the group, creating divisions that were difficult to heal. Resources were scarce, and tensions ran high. Ostracism was deadly. A family shunned, cast out from the protection of the group, might be left to struggle at the back of the wagon train, denied crucial help when disaster inevitably struck. Being alone on the trail was a death sentence. The romanticized myth of the West often focuses on external dangers like hostile wildlife and vast landscapes. But the slow, insidious breakdown of social order, the disintegration of trust and cooperation, was the true enemy that threatened to derail the entire endeavor. Encounters with Native American tribes were often peaceful, marked by trade and cooperation, a far cry from the violent stereotypes, not the constant violent clashes so often depicted in legend and popular culture. The real danger was the creeping suspicion, the simmering resentment, and the gnawing fear that your greatest threat, the one that could truly destroy you, might be the person sleeping beside you under the same canvas. The seemingly impenetrable circle of wagons, designed to keep external threats at bay, couldn't protect them from the destructive forces within themselves. The vast, unforgiving wilderness outside presented its own set of challenges, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. But the untamed wilderness within the human heart, the capacity for jealousy, greed, and betrayal, was often a far greater threat. Survival in this harsh environment depended on the strength of the community, on the willingness to help one another. Yet that very sense of community, the bedrock of their survival, could be the first thing to break under the immense pressure. The enemy within the circle, the potential for self-destruction, was always lurking, always waiting for an opportunity to strike. The physical toll was relentless. Hundreds of miles walked through heat, storms, and exhaustion. Blistered feet, aching muscles, and sunburn became daily realities. Disease was a constant threat. Cholera could kill in hours, and other illnesses like dysentery and typhoid claimed many, especially children. Graves lined the trail, each a silent marker of loss. The monotony of endless prairie bred hopelessness. Progress felt invisible. Anxiety over food, water, and livestock wore down even the strongest. The psychological strain was as punishing as the physical. Relationships frayed under the weight of fear and fatigue. Optimism faded, replaced by a grim determination to survive. The journey broke down bodies, minds, and spirits. The dream of Oregon became a distant, almost unreachable hope. The trail exposed every weakness, leaving pioneers vulnerable and changed. Survival came at a steep, often invisible cost. Family was the reason for the journey, but the trail could turn kin into strangers. Under constant fear and deprivation, love gave way to resentment and blame. Minor disagreements became bitter conflicts, fueled by hunger and desperation. Some families fractured. A father might abandon a sick wife, or a husband and wife might turn cold and silent. The family, meant to be a sanctuary, could become the harshest battleground. These betrayals were rarely spoken of, buried with the dead and hidden in silence. The journey west was supposed to build new lives, but for some, it destroyed the only life they'd known. The scars of these broken bonds lasted long after the trail ended. In the wilderness, even family could become a stranger. Beyond physical illness, a silent affliction haunted the trail, prairie madness or the whispering sickness. It was despair, born from endless emptiness and the crushing monotony of the landscape. Anxiety about the future and grief for what was left behind created fertile ground for this malaise. Victims grew withdrawn, lost interest in daily life, and stared vacantly at the horizon. Others noticed, but the demands of survival left little room for compassion. There was no cure for a sickness of the spirit. Some simply gave up, refusing food, lying down, and fading away. Others wandered off into the prairie, never to return. These quiet surrenders were rarely spoken of, their true cause hidden. The whispering sickness claimed many, its victims lost to loneliness and despair. The official cause might be fever, but survivors knew better. The trail's greatest killer was often invisible. The silence around it was as deep as the prairie itself. Every pound mattered on the trail. Wagons were quickly overloaded. Cherished possessions, furniture, books, heirlooms, were abandoned along the way, each loss a small defeat. The trail became a graveyard of dreams, littered with the debris of the past. But the heaviest burden was not objects, but people. When someone grew too sick to walk, they became a liability, slowing the entire group. The healthy began to resent the sick, a grim tension growing within families. The needs of the many often outweighed the needs of the few. Some families, falling behind, faced an impossible choice: stay and risk everyone, or leave a loved one behind. These choices were made in silence, the pain buried deep. The weight of survival was measured not just in pounds, but in heartbreak. The trail forced sacrifices no one wanted to make. The cost of moving forward was sometimes leaving someone behind. The Oregon Trail was a journey fraught with peril, a relentless test of human endurance. Amidst the hardships, a secret tradition emerged, a silent agreement never written down in journals or spoken of openly around the campfire. It was a pact born of desperation, a shadow lurking behind the hope of a new life. When someone became a terminal burden, their body failing, their spirit waning, and their presence threatened the survival of the entire family, families sometimes faced an impossible decision and made a pact, a silent, agonizing agreement to leave them behind, alone on the vast prairie, entrusting them to God's care. This was not an act of cruelty born of malice, but a desperate, heart-wrenching act of survival in a brutal and unforgiving land. The dying were given a final measure of comfort: water to quench their thirst, food to sustain them for a short while, a blanket to ward off the night's chill, and heartfelt prayers whispered with tears. Then, with heavy hearts, the wagon moved on, leaving them behind. No one dared to look back. To do so would shatter their resolve and break them completely. Survivors desperately told themselves it was God's will, a necessary sacrifice, the only way to ensure the survival of the many. This act, though born of necessity, was a source of profound and lasting shame, a dark secret never discussed after the journey's end, buried deep within their memories. It contradicted everything they held sacred, everything they believed about the sanctity of family, the unwavering power of faith, and the importance of community. The secret was carried to the grave, a burden they bore in silence, buried deep with the pain, the guilt, and the unspoken grief. New lives were built in Oregon, new communities forged from hardship, but the haunting memory of those left behind on the trail forever haunted the dreams and shadowed the waking hours of the survivors. The unspoken compact, the silent agreement, was a wound that never truly healed, a scar etched upon their souls. The price of survival, they learned, was often silence, a heavy burden to bear. The trail's darkest choices, the agonizing decisions made in the face of death, were hidden, locked away in the deepest recesses of the hearts of those who made them, a secret they carried to their graves. Those who reached Oregon were forever changed, older, harder, and marked by what they'd endured. They rarely spoke of the darkest moments, the betrayals, the madness, the impossible choices. Silence became their shield, protecting themselves and their new communities from the trauma of the trail. Instead, they told stories of adventure, courage, and perseverance. The myth of the Oregon Trail was born, a necessary story to make sense of suffering. This silence sanitized history, hiding the moral complexity and pain. Future generations saw only heroes, not the flawed, haunted survivors. The true story was buried, its weight carried quietly to the grave. The silence was both a refuge and a loss. The real Oregon Trail lived on in the shadows, unspoken but never forgotten. The pioneers who reached Oregon found abundance and built new lives, becoming the foundation of a new society. But the journey left a shadow: self-reliance, wariness, and a deep awareness of life's fragility. They were practical, unsentimental, and sometimes cold, shaped by the trail's harsh lessons. Kindness and generosity coexisted with a hard pragmatism. The crucible of the trail forged strong people, but not unscarred ones. Fear, grief, and shame became part of their character. They were survivors, always carrying the ghosts of the trail. The legacy of the Oregon Trail is dual: nation-building and courage, but also suffering and moral compromise. To understand the West, we must see both the myth and the reality. The painted wagon is only part of that story. The faces inside, heroic, flawed, forever changed, are the true legacy. The journey's shadow stretched far beyond the trail. The cost of a new land was written in silence, scars, and memory.